Here's a look at the shoulder upgrade that I've come up with for the Thunderbird. Now, if you've purchased a Thunderbird since February of 2017, then you're going to already have this upgrade. And the upgrade is a real simple thing to install on a model that has the original G10 shoulder mounts, but now the models are being shipped with an aluminum shoulder mount, which is like this. It's two pieces. One goes on either side of the frame, and they are bolted together for a pinch clamp onto the frame. And the bearings for the shoulders are secured inside of the mounts, and therefore there is no more need for making sure that this joint doesn't fail or become loose and allow the shoulder mounts to move up and down. As you can see here with regards to the dust, there's a little bit of dust in that joint. That's the G10 dust, and that's a good sign of a loose mount, or one that the CA joint has broken loose. And you can see on this side there is a heavy amount of G10 dust, and so therefore this side is really moving. And to prevent that from moving, all you do is CA that. But again, it's because the CA has broken loose, or the CA joint has failed, and it's allowing these shoulder mounts to move up and down. And this was a maintenance item. In other words, you wanted to check and make sure you didn't see any dust during your pre-flight, and if you didn't, then you knew the shoulders were okay. But if you did see some dust, well, then obviously that joint has failed and needs to be given some attention. So, but with these new mounts, there's no more need for that particular maintenance item. So I'm offering that these shoulder mounts, like I say, on the models after 2017 February, and also any prior Thunderbird. Those mounts can be added to an existing Thunderbird in a kit. And in the kit, what you get are two new plates that have been cut specifically for these mounts, and then also you get a set of spacers that are specific to these mounts, as well as four bearings, four new shoulder mount bearings. And there's also a nut and four washers with a bolt. Now, these four washers do not go on this bolt. This bolt, by the way, is the bolt that goes in the top hole of the mounts. The four washers go with the bolt that goes on the bottom, two on either side. So what you do first is take out the bolt on the front and the bolt at the rear of these upper plates. And you can discard those plates. You're also going to be removing the front plate and the rear plate of the G10 shoulder mounts. And you're going to be discarding those, along with this hardware and this hardware. You will not be using any of that hardware. The other hardware you will maintain and reuse. So whenever you mount these, first thing you're going to do is bolt these plates back in place using the existing holes and the existing bolts and nuts to do so. That's going to leave you with this mount on either side of the G10 plate mainframe. Then you're going to install the aluminum plate, setting it in between the front and the rear of this pocket. So you notice how that sits in there really well. And that locates this to the proper angle. So once you've done that, also there is a bolt on the bottom that has a spacer. You're going to be removing that bolt and the spacer, because this is going to rest where the spacer is. And then these 4 washers, 2 of those washers are going to go on this one, and 2 of them are going to go on the one on the other side. The bolt's going to go through it, and then also it's going to go through the large bearing plate and the small bearing plate. So on this side, for example, you have the large bearing plate, and you're going to have the aluminum piece, and then 2 washers, and then the large bearing plate, and then the head of the bolt. So the bolt's going to go through on this side. This will be on the right side, much like I have here, because here I have one mounted already. So if we look here in the bottom, you can see that I have the nut, and underneath the nut is the bearing plate, the small bearing plate, and then underneath that bearing plate there's 2 washers, and then there's the aluminum mount. And then coming on the other side, I have the head of the bolt, I have the large bearing plate, underneath that I have 2 washers, and then I have the aluminum plate. Now also there are 2 spacers that have a G10 spacer attached to them, and these spacers go on the back, so they would mount like this into that bearing, and this spacer is going to push the shoulder forward. You can see on this side it's pushing the shoulder forward. And then of course you're going to use the existing bolt that you have to put the shoulders back in place, or to remount those. You will be removing these 2 bolts, which would be this bolt here and this bolt here, in order to install this. But once you get them installed, these aluminum plates installed, then you can reinstall these bolts with the fuel tubing. Also note there's no washers that go on this smaller bolt. This goes in the top, which would be up here in this hole, and the bottom hole uses the existing bolt that's in your frame before the upgrade, which would be this bolt here. The only hole that you've got to drill is going to be through the frame, and it's going to be after you mount these 2 new plates and install the aluminum pieces. That's going to locate where this hole needs to be drilled, and then you simply drill a hole and then insert the short bolt. And again, the washers go in the bottom, not up on the top, but you'll need those washers to make up the difference in the height. Here you can see I've got about 80 mounts ready to go. You can get just the mount if you're designing your own model and you don't want to take the time to create your own mounts and you want to use these. That's fine. Just let me know what you need, and if you want to upgrade your Thunderbird to the aluminum shoulder mount, well, you can do that as well. And I offer a kit that has all the parts that you need in order to do that. So either way, I'm glad to help you any way I can. Thank you for your time, and enjoy the hobby.
Shall we begin?